Afternoon and welcome to today's live LBMA webinar. Today we are delighted to welcome you to listen to Manfred Matzinger-Leopold, Executive Director of the Austrian Mint, as he discusses a scientific overview of types of security features. Today we have Ruth Crowell, Chief Executive of LBMA, as our host. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, Ruth.
Thank you, Taylor, and a big thank you to Manfred for taking the time to be with us today. We wanted to get back to the science a little bit, and here at LBMA, we're also starting back some of our work on gold bar integrity, and all that's all about focused on counterfeiting and fraud and how we can raise the bar. But part of our work has been looking at experts in the field. Manfred is certainly one of the experts in the field, if not the expert in the field. So he's executive director for the Austrian Mint, but he is also chair of the Global Mint Directors Conference technical group, as well as the technical group for the European Mint Directors. So he brings with him wealth of knowledge, not only his personal capacity, but also in terms of in the coin industry, looking at security features and how they can see what works, what doesn't, strengths and weaknesses, and how they can try to continually advance standards. So with that, I know that we have folks on the webinar who we're going to have a lot of technical questions, and I really encourage you to put them through. We're going to have some time at the end where Manfred can try to address them, but if we don't have time, we're going to make sure we forward those on and come back to you. So please put your questions in throughout. But I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Manfred to walk us through. Manfred.
Ruth, thank you very much for this kind introduction. It's a pleasure for me to talk to this LBMA audience. And as said, I will try to give a short overview focusing on which kind of security features are used in the coin industry, where do I think they can be applied in bars, what are their advantages and disadvantages, and according to the agenda, I try to turn pages, yes. I will, after the features, also discuss a little bit on how to check if a material is really gold. And finally, I will focus a little bit on tracking gold items, bars or coins. This is in relation to the LBMA's intention to establish a tracking and database system. Before I'm doing this, please give me a short possibility to introduce the Austrian Mints for those who don't know it. And on the first slide, I show what's most important for us, which is our 195 employees. And here in Austria, based directly in the heart of Vienna, we produce about 1 billion turnover per year with our products. The company was established in 1194 after the Third Crusade. So it's really in Austria, the first industry which is still up and running since those times. And basically, we did one big change also in history in the year 1837, where we moved to our current building. This is a historic drawing, but the Austrian Mint is still producing in this building, and I'm sitting here, let's say, behind this balcony and giving this webinar. The latest point in our company history, to really make it very short and brief, is that in 1989, so a little bit more than 30 years ago, we were refound as a stock corporation when the Austrian government decided to produce a bullion coin, the Vienna Philharmonic, which is of course our flagship product here in Vienna. And this really turned the Austrian Mint to an international leading producer of gold coins and also bars. And I joined this company in the year 2012. Yeah, to come to what we are producing here, you see here from left to right. On one hand, we produce euro coins. This is the symbol on the very left. Our flagship product is the Vienna Philharmonic in gold. We also do it in silver as well as in platinum. The third big pillar is producing, I think, very nice and artistic commemorative coins. In the fourth field, we are focusing more and more to see coins also as a gift and address with a broader scope. Here you see some jewelry we are doing our clients. And finally, on the very right, that's a symbol for business-to-business products. where we are one key player on the world market for semi-finished products for the coin industry. And the main product here is gold and silver blanks, which we deliver to about 60 countries, which then made their beautiful coins out of our gold and silver blanks. I really try to keep it short because time is flying by, and I'm coming directly to security features. We can discuss a lot about it. In this webinar, I try to focus first on what is a security feature and what really does describe it. And then our more or less scientific publications on European Mint Director Working Group and Global Mint Director Conference level, we are used to talk about 4 items which do make a security feature, and which we have to describe. The first one is a definition. So what is the feature about? How is it implemented? The second is the way of security it gives to the product. What can a feature do and what does it? What is not possible with this certain feature? Then a question: how easy or how complicated is it to produce it? Of course, a complex feature should have a higher security value. Otherwise, it's not worth doing it. But not all features are right for all kinds of products. And finally, the same for the detection. It makes no sense to have an easy and cheap production, even with high security, if nobody in the field can detect it easily. So when we think about features, we always keep these 4 main factors in mind if we design and or recommend a certain feature for a certain product. And in the coin industry, if you talk about products, you can see that there are certain features which have advantages for commemorative coins. Others are for coins used for investment and therefore for bullion coins. And we will come to a point which features I think can be more or less easily and with more or less reasons can be extended to gold bars. But let me first say that we also classify the features itself in, on one hand, overt features, which are features you can easily see with a naked eye. We come to features which we classify as covert. These are features where we say they can be easily made visible. In banknotes, for example, there's a UV light and you see certain paths reflecting. In the coin industry, this can be really simply a microscope taking a closer look. But that's covert features are features which you can make easily visible with some help in public. And we talk about forensic features. These are features which are really dedicated to maybe a laboratory, maybe to a national bank or to the LBMA, for example, and they may also contain hidden features and features which are not published, or even not all parts of the features are published. Following this classification in the next slides, I will show examples which we know in the coin industry for certain features, and the ones which I have marked in bold are, in my opinion, in principle applicable to gold bars as well. I make this very fast and not focusing on everything in detail, but as an overt feature, what you can see, we shall not forget that simply the size of the object, the thickness, the printed image, the color of the metal. With gold bars, it's of course the color of gold, but there are also other materials. The shape are the most simple things to see if an item can be the item you want it to be or not. Then I think both bars and coins may share that QR or barcode features can be implemented. Microtext can be laser cut to the item. Latent images are used in the minting industry and maybe also applied to bars. We can discuss about microprinting and also with colors which are not from metal, which are applied to show that a certain marking is making a feature or is making an item potentially a genuine feature. These are all very, very simple possibilities. Again, in this case, with the overt feature, we want to make them visible to the naked eye. In coins, there are some more possibilities, I think, like we can use the rim. You can flip-flop the color from one side to the other. We can make a coin out of more than one material. This is bi- or tricolor metals. We can work with the edge with respect to milling or lettering. In the Covert class of security features, there are items where we can think about using the speed of sound in the metal. We can use electrical features, we can use magnetic features, we can do alloy detection as well in covert features, which is not naked eye visible, but with a microscope. You can go for very micro QR codes or micro barcodes, micro text, micro printing. Again, in the coin industry, there are, I think, a little bit more possibilities than with bars. And finally, forensic features. Frankly speaking, I'm at the moment not aware of a real forensic features as we define it in the coins. For coins, for example, there is IBIS, where unknown additive is inserted to the coin, which can then be detected, and from the structure of the material and from the doses, which is really quite low, you have to know what you're looking for. With DNA, which was, and IBIS was developed by the UK Mint, the Royal Canadian Mint brought coin DNA to the market. This is a kind of micro imprint with laser cutting, where they say it's unique and can be detected in the requested quality only by microscopic bursts. In Finland, they made coin tune, which is really the physical sound of a coin, which is then detected. And on European Commission level, Austrian Mint is working together with Monnaie de Paris and two of the German mints on a polymer ceramic feature, where a coin would have a polymer core, and ceramic elements are in this core, giving us UV light features and banknote-like security features, which can be implemented not in the metal, but in this polymer core of the coin, which will be available, I think, in 2022, 2023 technically. After this classification and a short overview of which kind of features for coins and bars are on the market, I'm coming to this section. How can we really ensure that the material itself, especially in the case of gold, of course, is gold, but the material we want to see? Let me start first. I think one of the main aspects is not only just to weigh the coin and do evaluation of the form and the length, width, and thickness, but one thing is for sure the density. By density, we physicians mean that there's, of course, for a certain volume, a certain mass which is expected for the object. And in gold, an object of 1 cubic centimeter must have the weight of 19.32 grams if it's of a genuinity and a degree of fine gold. In this case, on the right side on the picture, you see measurement instrument which can do this. On the left picture, we measure the weight, but the gold is outside water. So we have the pure weight of the coin, which is the ounce you see on the scale. And on the right side, you see if you put it to water, there's a little bit reduction because the water is reducing the weight according to the volume. And from this weight difference, we see if the density of the gold is what we want. And it should be very close to 19.32. But density may not be enough, because if an item is made from tungsten, which is very often used to fake and mimic gold, the density is very close with 19.25. And with a measurement failure, it's maybe possible to misinterpret it, or if not the whole gold, but only parts of a bar is replaced by tungsten, it may be very hard to detect it simply by this density measurement. So, in our opinion, we need something on top. And what we recommend, and what also is used by the Austrian National Bank if they want to check their gold bars, we combine the density measurement I was showing together with the speed of sound. On the right side on the picture, you see a probe which is applied to the bar, and this is emitting ultrasonic sound. And this ultrasonic sound is reflected within the bar. And we know that the speed of sound in gold is 3,240 meters per second. And this, together with the density, is very unique, because tungsten has a completely different speed of sound. So if the density and the sound speed is okay, you know that the bar is fine. This is, from our point of view, from Austrian Mint point of view, the recommended way to check if a thicker item like a gold bar is really made of pure gold. This possibility with the speed of sound is very hard to apply to coins, because the item is about 1 millimeter thick only, and if the thickness is very small, the timing is very crucial to measure, and here measurement errors can occur. So the sound measurement is recommended for thicker items like bars. If it's a coin, we think that adding electrical conductivity measurement is giving a very high accuracy that it's gold. In this case, the first ½ millimeter is exposed to electromagnetic waves, and from the electromagnetic feedback of the gold, we see if it's really the material. The value of 4.277 means that there is a reverse ohmmeter as a scale to the conductivity on this surface. And again, with electrical waves, you can measure the first ½ millimeter. So for a coin of 1 millimeter thickness, it's perfect if you measure density and electrical conductivity on both sides. And if the value is okay, you are happy with it. Finally, sorry, I wanted to mention that this measurement of the electrical conductivity may be not the best for bars, because as said, the electrical conductivity is measured in the first ½ millimeter. And so if tungsten is applied deeper in the bar, you would not find it. So finally, the recommendation would be, if you want to go for sure, measure density and speed of sound for thicker items than 1 millimeter. And for a coin with 1 millimeter, go for density and electrical conductivity on both sides. The safety that with the right value, it's real gold, is really extremely high compared with other measurement methods. I'm coming to the last section I want to send on this webinar. Is the chapter about genuineness and tracking. A little bit to my surprise, there are in the meantime also counterfeits which are made from real gold. In the coin industry, for example, the South African Krugerrand is exposed to this problem, where we think in Far East the coin is copied even from real gold, and the counterfeiter's benefit is more or less just to participate from the very good reputation of the South African Mint and of the Krugerrand. So one thing is that even the signatures we saw before, these features, can be copied, and they can be copied in these very special cases even to gold which is close or even which is fine gold. How counterfeiters work, you see with these two instruments which we are also using for the coin production. You could do 3D optical scanning. This is by the factor 10 more precise than laser scanning with the right instruments. Here at the Austrian Mint, we use this for very precise quality control. Of course, if you misuse the technology, you can scan a coin to a very high precision, and you have a model of the coin. And then with a modern laser, I was bringing here a Piranha model, which is also used for coin features as an example, with femtosecond laser engraving, which means that this 0.000 something 1 second is 1 laser pulse. You can generate very precise representation of the surface. So a lot of security features with a quite high effort can more or less theoretically be copied, and they could be even copied to gold, and it would still not be a genuine gold item, a genuine coin or a genuine bar. So what can we do in this case? In my opinion, and this ties very much in to the technical talks I had with Ruth and her technicians from the LBMA. Also in the coin industry, we discussed a lot about tracking. If a gold item is produced by a trustful member, if it's a gold bar or a gold coin, does not matter too much. And from this point on, I have a transaction history, which is really tracking who is the owner of this genuine item. We could overcome the other issues even the most modern security feature can give us. So the general idea of tracking is depicted here on this transparency. We would need a centralized database by an authorized body or by a body with a reasonable reputation, which can be, of course, LBMA. Second, all transactions within the systems are monitored to really have the complete history of the gold item, the coin or the bar. Every item would have a unique security number, and from this security number with the full transaction, we can always link it back to the refinery it came up, and it makes all owners and sellers giving this information, but of course only to the owner and seller, because only he or she must be sure that this item is genuine and was always treated well within a LBMA covered system. So that's the main idea of tracking. In a little bit more detail for the more technically interested ones, I think it would be beneficial that the serial number is submitted to the buyer only in case of purchase, because this is a need to know information only if the buyer is purchasing the item. Only then he gets the serial number. And when taking over the item, the buyer is checking the complete history and therefore confirms the transaction history he is then aware of after buying. The new buyer generates a new serial number, and this is then the serial number SN dash. If he is selling the item, the new buyer would see the old serial number SN and the new generated for this future trade serial number SN dash. And so with this SN and SN dash and SN dash dash, we could track the complete history of the gold item, and therefore the traceability back to the original refiner and the refining number is always guaranteed as long as the item is treated in a tracking system like this. Just to mention it, with this arrow, this generation of new transaction numbers can go on practically for infinite amount of trades. So all buyers will always add on to this loop one additional serial number, and with this history you have it. Just to mention it, of course, there is one possible drawback on the situation. Of course, here all purchases would have to be registered in a central database. And the only drawback I see in the system is that maybe not all buyers really want to be a part of this system. Of course, the complete and 100% anonymity is not possible if you talk about tracking. The advantages of tracking is you have a 100% assurance back to the refinery if you sell and or purchase the item. Yes, you see it now on the transparency. You have at the end of the day, because we give the serial number only to the next one, the registration, which is not 100% anonymous, but you have a tracking of ownership with the serial numbers. You have all the moves and all the locations. And one question which is always to be asked in those systems is if a certain buyer is not generating a serial number and sells the item outside the tracking system, of course, we lose track. There is no tracking of ownership. A question is under which circumstances such an item, let's say the gold bar, is sold to an anonymous person who is not registered in the system, under which circumstances such an item can re-enter this tracking system. In my personal opinion, this would be possible if, for example, a registered or a, as it's called in English, a certified body is assuring that this is a genuine item. You could do this by the laboratory methods from before. You can also check some imprints and security features and or serial numbers and or certificates, whatever comes with the coin or with a gold bar. And if an authorized body is doing this re-certification, it could get again a serial number. So if such a re-entry is allowed by the system, it would be, in my opinion, theoretically possible and could be implemented by reauthorizing the item, and by this authorized body it is re-entered in the system again. And also this you could see by tracking the ownership, not the ownership, but by tracking the serial number of ownerships before, with the moves outside the system, inside the systems, and the location. So also this possibility would be transparent. In strict to very strict or even ultra strict methods, it may be that such a re-entry is not possible. Of course, then you don't need this recertification, and you have the allowance of tracking only inside the system. That's, in my opinion, the two possibilities to treat with leaving the system or not. Yeah, finally, this brings me to the end of this short webinar. I hope it was interesting for you. To summarize my thoughts, besides security features, which were presented before, and their covert, overt, and forensic applications, I think the main question is it really gold, which can be checked always by density, if it's a bar, including speed of sound, if it's a coin, including conductivity. And I think it's a very good exercise to think about tracking to, on top of the material, trace and check if an item is genuine. And I really look forward to all the further ways of coming up with this technology in the world of the LBMA as well as in the world of coins. Thank you very much for your attention. I give back to the studio, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Manfred. And I really appreciate you taking the time today and also to start some of the discussions. You know, in terms of when we visited you and you took us through this, for me, it's one of the reasons I love my job is I'm learning new things all the time. And the science is a big draw on that side. I wanted to just sort of circle back on some of the points you raised, because certainly some of the questions that we get in is about if security features can be counterfeit, then why are we seeing so much investment in the security features, both in terms of the bar industry, but also the coin industry? Is it worth doing if you can have this application?
Yes, in my opinion, it's definitely worth doing so. In both the European and the global technical groups, I do this together as a chairman, and in both groups, I'm representing also their security groups. And in this group, we have a strong feeling that even if there is this theoretical possibility, which is quite high investment, to try counterfeiting the items we are producing, it's worth doing so for two reasons. One is that it's always a question of being ahead of the counterfeiter. And the other one is that it's finally generating additional trust, which is in fact true, because the counterfeiter would have to overcome the feature, and then it has to overcome the feature so that we don't find him or her. So finally, the security features generate trust to our clients, and it should generate mistrust or the possibility on finding the counterfeiter by trying to counterfeit the feature. I give an example on the coins. In the Euro system, there are at the moment 37 counterfeiting classes, and one class is identical to one counterfeiter. Out of the 37 coin counterfeiters, 33 were found because we understood the way they try to mimic the Euro counterfeiting features. Without those features, it would be by far too easy just to copy our items and that's it. If we place security features, it's getting harder, it's getting a certain attention, and some of the features have the possibility to track them back and to have the proof that this feature was counterfeited by this counterfeiter. This is something, of course, the counterfeiter don't like.
I would imagine as well, you know, it makes the coin producer, the bar producer, less of a target, depending on how complicated it is in terms of the security feature. So it's a bit like home security.
Yes, of course.
Not foolproof.
Of course, you are more than right. Bringing in the effort to do it is, of course, a first barrier, which was so obvious that I forgot it. That's, of course, the main argument, Ruth, for sure.
Sure, great.
The investment you saw before for the laser and the optical scanner is some investment for coins in the range of at least €1.5 million to do it in a way which is hard to detect, but then it's still not impossible.
And certainly, I mean, cost is something that does come out, particularly when you get to the bar industry, because a coin, you know, there's so much being put into the coin from a design, you know, how much, especially proof, etc. But when it comes to bars, particularly for our, you know, for local London, when you're talking 12.5, it's wholesale market. This is a very different product to a proof Austrian Mint, for example. So cost is certainly a factor when weighing up what to do. But it's one of the reasons that we have started as part of our work is review of security features and possible accreditation for refiners who are doing them to encourage them to adopt these. But many of them have been doing this for years. So it's really just trying to look holistically. Let's talk a little bit about the track and tracing. I've had a question come through about how many transactions are anticipated for a single item to be traded? And what would be the extreme amount of trades expected for a single item that needs to be tracked?
Frankly speaking, I cannot directly answer the question because we have at the moment no experience how many of those trades in such certain systems really would be finally managed. I can just answer from the technical point of view. With the size of nowadays databases, there is no limit to this amount. So I would say that whatever would be the natural trade of the item is not in any way hindered by the system, because it's just one quite small database set more to the database. So practically there is no limit for whatever is finally the real number of trades.
Okay. Okay. And then I think a sort of related question, and this is something we get quite often because we're looking at the vault side of life, right? You know, one of the reasons for LBMA to get involved in this work is to try to, you know, be that point and that market utility in terms of running the database so people have comfort in it, but also in terms of if everyone's coming up with a slightly different security feature and there's different checks based on different types of bars, you know, how can they be experts in each one? And it's really a question of, can the centralized database overcome this hurdle in terms of the security features and identification technologies? And then I didn't know if you have a view on that, Manfred.
If I do have, sorry, come again, please.
If you have a view in terms of, so from a vault perspective, there's concerns about if each bar is having to be dealt with separately, and obviously each refiner should have a different security feature, so that it can be, they own it, they understand it, and there's less likely that for someone to get that information. The sort of practical impacts on anyone who's checking. So if that's someone who's selling or someone who's vaulting, how would you see a centralized database overcoming that?
Yes, I understand the issue quite well, because actually in coins it's the same. You saw in my slides these quite huge possibilities, technical possibilities to implement a security feature, but the same feature, let's say a flip-flop coin, which has two different color effects per side, can be implemented again in 20 different ways. So the actual number of features is maybe 5 to 10 times larger than the even quite complex sheet I was showing before. So you are fully right. And in the coin industry, the coins are usually checked national only. So we in Austria do check all our products. If we would have to check, let's say, German product, we would have to ask the Germans. And if you have a practical tracking and tracing feature, of course, you have this electronic certificate going together with the history of the item, if it's a bar or a coin, and the history is already tracked back. So all steps until a certain buyer's serial number is checked, and the guy participating and buying it with a new serial number I was mentioning before as SN dash would have a guarantee that this is a genuine item. So in my opinion, it would be very helpful if somebody wants to run such a system and wants to participate in the system, because it really would make this checking international and not really depending on the refinery and the issuer. Of course, I would still recommend that the security features directly are still on the item to make it as secure as possible. So I don't see it as a instead of security features. I personally understand it very much as an add-on. So I'm talking about the checking, is it really gold, plus the security feature and the certificate, plus electronic tracking, then you are on the safest ground possible, I think.
No, definitely. And I think for, you know, we think a lot about what we call the chain of integrity. And so trying to put that in an electronic space. As you were going through in terms of, particularly when it comes to database and like what should be allowed back in or what could be allowed back in, if anything, that's when you start to have real conversations about life cycles and what degree of risk is acceptable. And there might be different degrees of risk acceptable within, say, the professional, you know, wholesale market. It might be very conservative, whereas on a retail side, there's more flexibility. I had a couple questions that were sort of along these same lines, Manfred. One was, is the Austrian Mint buying back gold coins it produces and puts them back on the market?
The Austrian Mint is having a daughter company which is called Schöller Münzhandel, which is also based in Vienna, and we run buying back our coins indirectly via Schöller. So our daughter company is taking care in our strategy about the so-called secondary market. So we have a primary production strategy and selling off. If somebody wants to buy back the feature, we send them, we send them to our daughter company, Schöller Münzhandel, and buy back via them.
Okay.
And Schöller is a 100% daughter of the Austrian Mint.
Okay, great.
In the complete family.
Well, I have another question in terms of the IBIS feature. I think a few people asking what is it used for? Just a little bit more on IBIS. What is it used for, and who uses IBIS? I believe you covered this in your remarks, but just to clarify that.
Okay. Frankly speaking, I really want to give only a very rough overview because this is from our competition from the UK and it was invented by them. So for more details, I would ask you to refer to the UK Mint by themselves. But what we can say, because this is disclosed, is that it in principle works with a quite special modification by adding material directly inside the coin, which can be redetected with very, very precise instruments. So that's the main idea. As far as I am informed, but here I really have to take care, is that the UK Mint is using it by themselves in coin products so far. Again, because it's talking about UK Mint, I may be wrong in the latest point of time here, but this was the intention of the UK Mint.
Okay, we can check with them just to come back to the folks asking the questions. And then I have one last question, and I'm being reminded we need to wrap it up, so I'll let you do some final comments. So in terms of statistics on counterfeiting for coins, what are they to date? And are there any indication of what types of counterfeiting is most widely used?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you very much for this question. By heart, I can answer this question for the Euro system because here we have the data. The extent of counterfeits in the Eurozone is still a very good one. We have about 50 ppm of counterfeits in the Eurozone, which means from 1 million coins, about 50 may be a counterfeit. The mainly affected coins for their value is, of course, obviously the 2 euro piece. Interestingly, there are also a quite low amount of 1 euro and of 50 cents. And within the way of counterfeiting, we see that there is a quite clear tendency, because up to, let's say, 10 years ago, the counterfeiter really tried mainly to do a product which has a look and feel to the public so that the perception is that it's a genuine coin. So the counterfeiter was directly trying to reproduce all kinds of security features, overt and covert, and if available, even forensic add-ons, as good and as close as possible. In latest times, there's a trend that the counterfeiters more and more focus more on technical counterfeits. So the picture itself and the appearance to public is not so important anymore, because the latest trend is that these coins are put to retail banks in their coin machines. So they are even not intended to buy something. They're just put on a retail bank's konto in the machine. And the account is cleared, and the counterfeiter has kind of tricked the machine in the bank's foyers. What we are doing against it is more and more technical education to retail banks, closer connection to customs, closer connection to executive organizations, and the banks are also shrinking the times the foyer with these machines is open. And again, we find the counterfeiter finally mainly because you see in which era in Europe there's a high density of a certain counterfeit, and from there we trace it back. So far, with a success rate of 33 found counterfeiters out of 37. The one which is longest on the market was 4 years. So at the end, it's, I think, quite successful.
It's impressive. Thank you. And I said last question, but there's a couple good ones, so I'm going to hopefully
very
Taylor
last
put it
question.
down. So last two. So a question coming through about assuming that buyers will not generate new serial numbers, which is very likely considering bars are moving very fast. How can a centralized database help against fake or counterfeited copies of a gold bar? If someone simply makes a copy, the database would identify that copy as a genuine bar.
Yes, this would be a kind of a problem because then you would have a batch, and out of this batch only one is really the genuine item. This is in fact leading to this recommendation that not a bar has a serial number, because it already has a serial number and a certificate which goes with a bar, which can be counterfeited, as can be the packaging or whatever you do around the bar. The main advantage of a tracking system is that you're not tracking the item itself, but you're tracking the complete trace. So every purchase has the generation of a new, let's call it serial number. You can think about this new serial number, maybe it's easier to think about it in a way that it's a transaction number. It doesn't matter. If buyer A gives the future buyer B an item, a specific number shall be given to this trade. If the buyer B is giving it to C, it must have the number where he got the item from and the original purchase. And so with these transactions, every transaction has a certain number. I was calling it serial number dash. You can also call it transaction number. But you must track the transaction and not only the item. Otherwise, yes, a batch of counterfeits could be generated.
And so certainly when we're looking
I hope this was still clear.
I think it's clear to me. I think it answers sort of the questions that we came to when we were looking at, how do you digitalize that chain of integrity, or that process of it moves from an accredited refiner to a professional vault. But I think there also would be a point where, as long as the bar is sitting within that vault, you don't need to record in terms of book entry transfers as it's trading within the terminal market. It's only upon exit of that market where you need to really start tracking the transactions and again, the movement of the material. So one, that's helpful when it comes to how much data we're storing, but it's also looking at what do we need to track in order to address the key risks.
Yes.
So I think transaction number is a nice way to think about it, because I think serial number, as you say, the bars do have that. And then my final question is, has the Philharmonica ever been counterfeited?
Yeah, up to date, there is no known counterfeit of the Vienna Philharmonic. To make the answer really complete, there are certain copies which we see more as a copyright infringement, because it's a product mimicking us and then showing the word copy, or in German Muster or something like this. There are items like this, but the counterfeit would be the possibility or the try to really replace a genuine one. And in this sense, there are no counterfeits of the Vienna Philharmonic on the market which we would be aware of. And this makes us a very lucky mint and a very happy mint.
I'm sure. So I'm really wrapping us up. I wanted to say thank you so much, first and foremost, to Manfred for all of your time and being so generous with your knowledge. I can see from the questions that I'm sure a few people will want to continue the conversation, perhaps offline. But I just wanted to say thank you again. And if you had any final comments, otherwise we'll wrap up.
Ruth, I also have to say thank you. Thanks for everybody watching and for being interested in security features and the point of view here from Austria. I'm trying to make my mint and try to be as open as possible. So I'm happy to answer also questions which come to your mind afterwards. Please just send them to Ruth and or myself. We will take care of, and maybe we have a chance to meet also in person. Frankly speaking, it's still a little bit strange to talk to a camera. I hope it was useful for you. I hope you understood what I tried to talk about. And again, I would be more than happy to continue conversation via email and or even in person. Thanks for watching to everybody. Thank you, LBMA. Thanks, Rose, for giving this opportunity.
Thank you, Manfred. And thank you so much to everyone who took part on the live webinar today. This will be published on our website and available if people didn't have time or your colleagues couldn't make it. And this is the first of a double feature this week. So if you share with your colleagues, but also have a look for the webinar that's coming up again on Thursday. And then we take a little break for the summer holiday. Even if we're not going to the beach, I think everyone needs a little downtime. So wishing you a good summer and a good rest of the day. Thanks very much. Bye.